Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. It is Sunday, November 10th, 2024, and this is your Ukraine war news for today. There are 1,350 Russians off the battlefield. So let's try to first put that in perspective before we move on to the big headline, which is just massive drone strikes from Russia to Ukraine and from Ukraine to Russia. But let's do this first. 1350, is that high or low? Well, 750 is about the average daily casualties throughout the entire war. 1271 was the average if you look at the month of September. And then we see this article here. Russia suffers the worst month for casualties, says UK defense chief. And look at this. Admiral Sir Tony Radkin said Russia's forces suffered an average of about 1,500 dead and injured every single day in October. So what does that mean? That means now he's rounding, but that would round up to about 45,000. It's well north of 40,000 and just probably under 45,000. Now, Russia's about to suffer 700,000 people killed or wounded, says the UK. But according to Ukrainian estimates, they've already passed the 700,000 mark. The British numbers and the Ukrainian numbers and even the American numbers are a little bit off. They're in the same neighborhood, but the Ukrainian numbers are a little higher. Okay, so what's happening here is probably this, that Putin always escalates just before negotiations. I think that's a very fair point. And if that's the case, that makes sense of why you're seeing the numbers up this high, just constantly up this high for the last 2 months. He knows that he knew that the presidential elections were coming and was perhaps putting some hope or stock in that the elections would change some things. So here we are. Okay, the big headline now is that overnight Russia launched another massive drone attack. 145 launched Shahed drones. 129 were taken down either by regular shooting down or 67 through electronic warfare. 10 left Ukrainian airspace. 145, that's really remarkable. Now, I've told you before that at one time I read, and something must have changed, that the Russians could put together 16 per day. Now, 16 times 7 would be 112, and so they're using 145. That's pretty. So I think they have to have some ramped up production here. Okay, Zelensky says that Russia launched 600 drones, 800 guided bombs, and nearly 20 missiles just this last week. And he goes on to say there is no security from T without strong decisions. This is clear in every country. And then he goes on and he's making his case as we're moving forward. And without justice, lasting peace is impossible, because he's looking toward what's going to happen here as Trump is talking about what kind of deal could be made. Okay, Russia launches record 145 drones overnight in attack. Civilian infrastructure bore the brunt in Odessa as 5-hour air raid alerts gripped Kyiv. So Kyiv down 15, so 15 of those 145, but Odessa was the main target here. Russians launched a massive drone attack on the people of Odessa, leaving several victims. Many residential buildings, homes, and shops were damaged. Again, they're attacking civilian population. There is no military justification for what they were doing. Here, I'm going to pause that. There you go. Ukrainian drones attacked the Moscow region this morning as well. So it was going both ways. The Ukrainians were also attacking Moscow in return. According to Russian media, all 17 drones were shot down, but fires were observed. Emergency services are working at the affected areas because nothing happened. Okay. Now, a little bit later, we find out that Russian authorities were claiming 32 drones over Moscow were shot down, and this is the kind of drone that you would see. Reports indicated at least 100 drones. I think that's 100 drones total, but the largest attack in Moscow. According to official information from Russian news agencies, today's drone attack on the Moscow region was the largest attack of the war. Okay, so there's that. Now, what effect did it have? Well, some things were hit and some things were down. We're not exactly sure, but Ukraine launched these drones targeting Moscow, forcing temporary closure of 3 of the capital's airports, Russian officials said on November 10th. Again, this is a great image because you're getting to see what some of the drones were looking like. Now, the ones that they were shooting were more like airplane side, like looking drones, looking more like that. And again, the Russian media said that this was the largest since the full-scale invasion began. Now, the U.S. is so Joe Biden knows that his time is limited to get the material out to Ukraine, and he wants to get material to them that's not going to escalate the war. Like, we don't want the offensive weapons that can go into Russia and then cause perhaps some escalation where we have a wider war or perhaps a nuclear war. I think he thinks he's saving the West from a wider war with Putin. So he's sending things like this. The U.S. urgently sends more than 500 interceptor missiles to Ukraine for the Patriot and NASAMS air defense system. That's all good, but it's not the same as providing things that they can use to hit inside Russia. Jay in Kyiv commented, U.S. only needs to urgently send air defense because Biden forbids Ukraine from striking Russia's launchers and airfields. Now, it's not the only reason why, but the point's taken that if Ukraine had the means to strike this, there would be far fewer of them going. Now, overnight, Ukrainian attack drones also successfully struck an ammunition dump at Russia's 1060th Logistics Center outside of Bryansk, setting the facility ablaze. Ukraine continues to ramp up its nightly drone campaign after a month-long hiatus. So they toned it down just before the U.S. presidential elections, and they seem to be back in full swing. This is another image of the same. Ukraine's general staff has confirmed overnight strikes targeting the ammunition depot. At least 8 explosions recorded with fires and signs of secondary detonation at the military base. Now, Anna from Ukraine was talking about how there were reports from the general staff of 52,000 military Russian targets damaged or destroyed by Ukrainian drones over just 1 month. Now, that has to include, to my mind, that like ammunition at an ammunition depot and things along those lines. But that's a lot. Okay, let's look to the front lines. Russian forces will eventually make operationally significant gains if Ukrainian forces do not stop ongoing Russian offensive operations. But on the other side, the Russian military can't sustain such loss rates indefinitely, especially not for such limited gains. And we'll see what the limited gains are, how much real estate that is, but we know what the losses are, and it's been pretty heavy. So in 1 month, they lost 40 to 45,000 soldiers. Now, if you expand that into 2 months, you're looking at about 80,000 total casualties over that period of time. And it's just too much to be sustained over a long period of time. Russian forces reportedly lost almost 200 tanks, 650 armored vehicles, suffered an estimated 80,000 casualties in taking roughly 1,500 square kilometers during a period of intensified Russian offensive operations in September and October 2024. Now, Jay in Kyiv is helpful in giving us some perspective here, with Biden now having slowed Ukraine's weapons assistance to the lowest point of the war for 4 months. Russia's advancing in the fastest rate in 2 years, equivalent to one Luxembourg every 3.5 months. And by advancing, I mean leaving nothing but desolate wasteland and ruins. But essentially, they're gaining about that size ground every 3.5 months. Now, that's not a lot, but you can't keep allowing that. The pie is only so big. Ukraine's not trying to expand the pie. They're trying to push the Russians out of it. Now, in some other news, Putin has signed a treaty solidifying Russia's strategic partnership with North Korea. This has been done. This was created in the summer. It was ratified a few weeks ago, and it's just signed now. So we used to talk about an axis of evil, but they are solidified by law as an axis of evil. Meanwhile, a Russian state TV host says that Putin will win and conquer all of Ukraine. Now, remember, they're not just saying the Donbass, they're saying conquer all of Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia school teachers wore tinfoil caps to protect themselves from NATO satellites. Yeah. A few trolls tricked some educational institutions. 7 schools behaved and took the reports and just did what they said, even though it was kind of a foolish thing to do. You can actually find the verified news articles that they were doing exactly this. Okay. Finally, my friends, from Darth Putin, the parody site, on this day in 1999, the OSCE conference was in Istanbul. Russia promised to remove our troops from Moldova and Georgia by the end of 2002. We lied. which is why Ukraine should believe our promises now and negotiate. Yep. And here it is, November 1999, members of the organization. Yeah, here we go, by December 2002. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.